Back. I made it. We are here live in Las Vegas, tnoozLIVE at studio with Ben Drew. Introduce yourself. Tell the audience who you are and what you do.
Well, thanks very much for having me, first of all. My name is Ben Drew. I am Vice President of Business Development at TripAdvisor. I focus on the attractions industry as well as the rentals industry and kind of have responsibilities in both. Originally, I'm from the UK, moved over to Boston about 3 years ago, and currently very glad to be here. It's first Arivals conference ever, so really looking forward to getting to know some of our suppliers and partners a little better.
So you moved from the UK to lovely Boston?
I did, yes.
A little more snowy, or you're someplace also equally, not that the UK is more temperate, but you know. How's that transition?
Well, it's been an interesting transition. I love being in the US, but I do miss it when I go back to London. There are certain things about it when I'm there that I kind of remember, but it's very hard to remember when you're not there. But I do love it over here as well. I'm very pleased to be in Las Vegas too, which is a bit of a different place to Boston, I got to admit.
Absolutely. I'm not the snow person. I can't do that. You know. Really? Let's talk about tours and activities. You guys obviously is a big part of what you offer.
Yeah.
User-generated reviews plus bookings.
Yeah.
How's that going? Just kind of walk us through kind of some background for those who maybe aren't familiar. You never know.
Yeah.
What ended up happening is went from user-generated reviews to kind of offering that more on-site experience.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let me take you back to kind of early days of TripAdvisor, where TripAdvisor had an unparalleled advantage in the hotel space and lodging in general. There was this tremendous asset of reviews that TripAdvisor had built up, and pretty early on we realized that that wasn't going to last forever, especially in this world that moves very fast in the online space. Expedia collecting reviews, Priceline collecting reviews, and so over time we needed to branch out. We needed to develop capabilities and businesses in other parts of the travel space to complement those areas. And now you can use TripAdvisor still for hotels, right from a 5-star hotel through to a campsite, and anything in between, including vacation rentals and inns and bed and breakfasts. But you can also use it to find things to do when you're in destination. You can also use it to find restaurants where you might want to eat at when you're in a destination, or for that matter, you're just in your local market. And I could see the future kind of expanding that more and more. I mean, TripAdvisor is a travel-centric brand, but we've done what I think is a pretty decent job in opening up that more tours and activities vertical. Do
you feel that the suppliers, those folks who are, maybe let's say like mid to smaller side, because I always like to focus kind of those who maybe want to be bigger or who are comfortable where they are, that that TripAdvisor is a smart way for them to get those reviews and making sure, like, is it, a viable channel of business, I guess, for them to make sure that the people who are doing the research want to book with them? And walk me through kind of that.
I mean, that's a good question, because a lot of the research that's out there indicates that this market in particular has a very fragmented base of suppliers. I think, in fact, half or maybe a little over half of all the suppliers that are considered within this space have gross sales of less than $250,000.
So half under 250.
Half under 250, and that's the Focusrite from the Focusrite study. So, one of the challenges is actually bringing together all of that supply in a way that's consistent and a way that allows the traveler to sort easily through the different options that may or may not be available. May not be available to them. So that's kind of some of the industry dynamics. Over time, maybe it will consolidate, maybe it won't. That's one of the interesting things that we're kind of looking to work out. But very much so for that, if you want to win in this market, you have to play in that small space. We have to play with the suppliers that are on the smaller end of the spectrum and produce solutions that are very customized to them. That's what we're doing right now when we're essentially overhauling and rebuilding our extranet to allow suppliers to increasingly manage their business, certainly manage their marketing and review collection practices online. So very much targeting at those sort of supplies.
So for the consumer, really, it does come down to direct booking, right? I mean, that I'm like on TripAdvisor and that I'm doing reviews, and that I really that extra completing the process is kind of an essential next step, right, on the mobile experience. Like, would you agree? And how is that? If you don't agree, why not? Or how you guys are approaching that?
I mean, we see it as essential. We see ourselves as solving a traveler problem, and that problem is that When you turn up in a destination, historically, you probably didn't have anything booked, and you probably didn't consult that many sources when you were looking to book your tour or activity. With TripAdvisor, you can source all that knowledge from the accumulated base of wisdom that is to be found on the TripAdvisor reviews, and you can book so that you can plan your vacation around the things that you want to do whilst you're there. You brought up a good point with mobile, though, and the mobile bookings that we're seeing, or the mobile interactions with the site that we're seeing, are a little bit different to the desktop, as you might imagine. Mobile bookings tend to be lower in value. They tend to be more last minute, and they tend to be made from within the destination themselves. And that all makes sense. You know, it's often a less considered purchase. Something on desktop would be much more considered and probably be a more complex product with a higher average value. So, you know, and mobile is growing a lot faster than desktop. So one of the challenges that we are solving is to make the mobile experience more bookable and you know, higher converting in that sense.
And is that something the suppliers know to ask for, or do they kind of look to you guys? And again, small to medium size,
Yeah.
you know, they look to you guys like, help us fix this, or is it, you know, what's the sophistication, I guess, of
Well,
people?
that's a good question, because most suppliers, if you talk to them about their marketing strategy, most suppliers will say, well, I have my own website and I use online travel agencies such as Viator and TripAdvisor as in addition to that. About 60% will say that, you know, they have those things, plus they use the online agents. When you talk about mobile commerce, that number falls to 40%. And actually, I was surprised. 40% is still quite a high number of suppliers using mobile commerce. But it's substantially lower than those who use desktop commerce. So, you know, there is still a way to go in. There is still a way to go from where we are today to where we need to be to allow travelers to really book online whilst they're in destination on their mobile.
Does that make it? Seems like it's always just extraordinarily complicated. I know I've said this all morning, but for suppliers, like all the different places that you can do, you know, bookings and getting your inventory, making sure they're in the right partners. Would you guys see yourself as kind of the primary spot and then helping people distribute further if they need to, like as the nexus? Or maybe you already do, and apologies if so, but you know, is it that I can put my inventory in one place and you would help me make sure it's everywhere it could be booked? Or how does that work out? Because it seems to me as a supplier, it's just a lot of work. Like if I'm making $250K, I don't have time to manage 50 channels.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on the supplier, I think. Some of our small suppliers are perfectly willing, able. They do a great job of managing their tours and activities using the software that we provide and that anybody can sign up for. Then there's the suppliers at the other end of the spectrum who actually have the funding and the need for a customized piece of software that they can build themselves. And then there's those suppliers in between. And that's where it gets interesting, because those suppliers are big enough that it's quite challenging for them to manage their marketing or using just the tools that an OTA has, that an online travel agent has, but can't yet afford or it's not worth investing in a bigger piece of software. And for them, there are a number of emerging software products, many of which are available both in the US and beyond. And Viator actually has deep connectivity with them. So if you choose one of those products to help you run your business, it actually makes the quality of your listing on Viator and TripAdvisor much better. Mm-hmm. Can do it anyway.
Which makes sense too, because you kind of centralize. And then it allows you to manage your reviews and making sure that you're always focused on that part, which is so important.
Well, and moreover, it saves you time. And what I would say is that some of those suppliers are kind of evolving, not just to be providers of software, but to be providers of e-commerce support, and they tie their own fees to how well you do. Which is exactly what we have always done with our commission model. If you don't make money, we don't make money. So that's an interesting model. It's yet to be seen whether that will take hold in the software space, but interesting emerging. And
imagine
trend.
like, you know, earlier in the size or, you know, kind of smaller spectrum, in the spectrum, you know, it's much easier on the commission base, but as you get certain size, you start to think, oh, I just want to pay you the flat rate, right? And there's that kind of business model tension that we kind of see sometimes.
Yeah, and we see it in a lot of different, I mean, TripAdvisor, we span the hotels, rentals, tours, attractions, restaurants, and we see a similar kind of dynamic in many of those verticals where you have that segmentation by size.
Right.
Actually, in tours and attractions, I understand that about 50% of people, 50% of suppliers in the US already use some kind of software, and 10% intend to look into it or investigate using it, leaving 40% that is still, on that end of not.
Like, what do they do? That's the thing. Is it just really just kind of like call in, take a sheet, get information?
Yeah,
is that really
could be Excel spreadsheets, right. Could be pen and paper, could be
just show up, give me your cash.
And that isn't to say that that's a bad way of doing it. Yeah. A lot of these businesses have built very effective operations, and that's great. But it's always be using the tools that's most suitable for where you are, I think is the message.
And there's so many different types of suppliers. Some people are perfectly fine being 250K because that's the lifestyle business.
Exactly.
I'm happy, my life is good, I live where I want to live. And we talked a little bit about dynamic pricing, the kind of moving some of the hotel and airline, just kind of what is now kind of table stakes in other industries into tours and activities. And more folks are doing this and thinking about demand curves and when and where. What do you guys think about that? TripAdvisor officially, you personally, does that make sense in tours and activities?
I think it's an interesting question because in hotels and other verticals, yield management, which is the practice of raising prices when demand is high and lowering prices when demand is low, so that your price is always the balancing factor between supply and demand, has become very commonplace. Particularly in hotels, a big hotel company will have an entire team of revenue managers or yield managers that will do exactly this. I remember 3 years ago in the vacation rental space, we looked at rentals and noticed there wasn't a lot of yield management going on amongst owners and property management companies, and said, hey, there's no reason why this shouldn't follow the hotel market. And largely that has been correct. There's been a lot of progress within the vacation. It's not there yet by any means, but there's been a lot more progress, a lot more funding in that space, a lot more products providing services that can accomplish that goal. So I think the same will happen here. Typically, these things tend to happen faster than you expect. You might imagine, it's a long way off, but I have a suspicion it will probably come to us faster than we might imagine, because there's a lot of money to be made there.
And the data is there. You guys obviously know search volumes, and you have a lot of that information about, is my tour popular at this time, or when am I possibly getting there? So I feel like the information's easily grabbed, of course, and it's kind of acting on it.
It is. It is kind of easily grabbed. I do kind of think, though, that developing a deep competency in that is something that probably comes a little bit later, after we've really solved or really made big strides in solving the traveler problem and the supplier problem. How do they work with us in the most easy, effective, high-quality way, frictionless way on the supply side, and then how does the traveler find that supply and match them up really easily? Those are the fundamentals of a marketplace, and the kind of science of pricing up and down it, tremendously valuable, probably a secondary problem compared to those two.
Are you seeing any particular trends with the traveler behaviors on TripAdvisor that are interesting, and the way maybe they're using the site or growing, maybe the mobile versus desktop? Because I sometimes think people like maybe mobile. Everyone always thinks mobile's got to be 80%, 90%, but it's just there's always an advantage to having a bigger screen. So do you guys see? Are we at mobile saturation? Are you guys happy where it's at, or do you see it continuing to run as far as the percentage of views and use?
I can't speak for all of TripAdvisor, but with the areas that we focus on here in tours and attractions, mobile continues to grow much faster than desktop, and a lot of that is related to the in-destination aspect. One of the products that we offer is a skip the line type of product, where you want to go to a popular tour or attraction. There's a line or a queue in order to buy a ticket, but if you buy it on your cell phone there and then, you can skip the line. A lot of people find this product whilst they're in the destination and go, I'll turn up, but then they see the line and then they buy the product. So, those kind of things are becoming more and more popular. For obvious reason, it's a great product, and some of that is driving the mobile adoption.
it's interesting to see. I love it when I see things kind of get segmented, and you can like make something that you would never think there's a premium version, and you know how it can keep kind of giving people new ways to buy. You know, you have the basic one, and it's like skip the line, and next it's like skip the line, and afterwards you get this, or you know.
Exactly. And we have things like the Met in New York, famous attraction in New York, and you can actually, well, you can obviously go and visit the Met, but you can also buy a tour from a kind of qualified art historian before the gates of the Met, before the doors of the Met open, so that you're in a private tour with a small group with somebody who knows what you're looking at and can educate you a little bit on it when there's nobody else in the entire museum. So products like that are more unique, give people great experiences, and often they get found in destination whilst you're wondering what I should do with time before breakfast tomorrow morning.
But really focusing on the experience, which is the whole point. Tours and activities are especially, I mean, hotels obviously talk about it all the time.
Very memorable experience.
Yeah, and you'll pay a little more for it, which is great for everybody.
Exactly.
Let's kind of pivot into the last couple questions, but on in the tours and activities side of things, marketing, approaching, reaching out to suppliers. How do you market what you guys do at TripAdvisor in your particular vertical?
Well, we have a tremendous sales team that is on the phone night and day contacting suppliers. And we are, apart from being the kind of largest global collection of suppliers, we're still pretty small in the market. Our market share is low compared to what we don't have. Not necessarily compared to other competitors, but compared to what's out there, there's a tremendous amount of supply and suppliers that we don't yet work with. So we have a great sales team that is constantly on the phone, connecting with those suppliers. We come to conferences like this. We do a huge amount of marketing in the kind of online marketing to find and onboard new suppliers.
And a lot of education. Is that you kind of have to, for those 40% that remain that aren't maybe digital?
A lot of it is that, and just understanding what those suppliers are looking to get out of it. And, often they're looking to get different things. It's not just distribution. It could be review collection. It could be, it could be all sorts of things. So.
Every supplier is different, right? That's always a tough one.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sounds like we're getting into lunchtime.
Okay.
I have one more question once he stops. How's the sound, Nick? Should I wait a second? I have one more question. Okay, I'll keep going. One last question. This is the one I've been asking everyone. Arival is the first time event.
Yes.
I think maybe it's a long time coming.
Yeah.
Why did you guys come here? What do you really hope to gain out of being here? And talk a little bit just about that desire to be here and participating in this first time.
Well, I admire what Douglas has done with this event. I think he's pulled together a tremendous gathering, and a gathering that this industry has not had in the past. He was telling us his story about how he did it earlier, and it's a very inspirational story. So I think his leadership on this event has been a tremendous asset to making it happen. We've got about 10 people from our team here. It's a perfect opportunity to get in front of suppliers and to hear their feedback and really kind of deeply hear their feedback. We're out of the office. We're out of our day jobs. We haven't quite turned our phones off, but we've pretty much turned our phones off, and we're here to listen to those suppliers that we've for a long time had relationships with. We're spending some quality time there.
I mean, it's amazing when you have suppliers all over the world. That's a lot of travel. You can't possibly visit everyone if you're a global, tourist activities especially.
No, exactly. And
there's no headquarters of a tour. Most of them are local, right? You can't just go to New York and there's a headquarters.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for spending the time. I hope it goes well.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. And we're going to be right back. It's lunchtime, I think, if Sky's around. Is it lunchtime? No, it's not lunchtime. We have one more coming. We'll be right back.